right. Our next story comes from Dark Reading. And the title here is Open Source AI Models, Perfect Storm for Malicious Code and Vulnerabilities. A couple days ago, maybe a week ago now, there was a report by a company who, of course, can help you out with securing your AI endeavors. Identified a couple of malicious machine learning models that were posted up into Hugging Face. And
which is such a name. I just got to say for the record.
yeah, what was the game? Right, it brings me back to the
Half-Life?
the Half-Life. Yeah, the crabs that
Yeah.
jump on your face, right?
Well, I mean, let's start with Alien and the facehuggers from Alien.
Fair.
Your mom also jumps on my face, but we're not going to talk about that.
I knew. See, I knew it was going to happen.
It's been a long day. It's only Monday. Sorry.
Anyhow, getting past their name, this ironically, this particular issue, when you actually trace it back, doesn't impact LLM models. It impacted some other types of machine learning models. But in Python, in PyTorch, there's this thing called pickle. It's a pickle file. It basically is how you serialize and deserialize data. And when you use Python as the vehicle for consuming these AI models, pickle files are the way that you basically interact with the model. And now Hugging Face has some protections, because basically anybody can upload a model and offer it for for download. They actually have some amount of checking in place, looking for malicious scripts that can be implemented in that pickle file. So the adversary here took the very sophisticated step of using 7-zip instead of regular zip, which then made those malicious scripts, opaque to Hugging Face's protections, right, or defenses. So, yeah, I mean that was very sophisticated.
That's some nation state level foo right there, man. That
It's
is
very sophisticated. Now, I will say, by the way, there's been a lot written about this. I'm not sure it's really covered well in this particular article, but the models that were identified in that instance appear to be focused on proving out that attack tactic. It wasn't necessarily intended to be like a I don't think they were actually expecting people to download it and use it en masse. It looked like it was it was a proof of concept type of thing. So unclear if it was for a researcher, but if you were unlucky enough to have downloaded it and run it while it was there, it would create a reverse shell to a fixed IP address. So the system you ran it on would have attempted to create a reverse shell that calls out to an IP address that some unknown actor controls. But
do you think they paid for the license of 7?
I don't know. Good question.
We'll just add it to the list of misdeeds.
Really good question.
That's what I'm here for.
I think it's as they point out in this article, it portends a larger challenge with our rush to embrace AI. And in the article, they point out that 61% of companies that are dabbling with AI are using models that come from the open source ecosystem, like Hugging Face. And so I would say, broadly speaking, that as we joked about earlier, the defenses against against attacks leveraging these models is not very well refined, right? Your CrowdStrike agent isn't going to detect probably malicious, a malicious model, right? Unless it's something that's very obvious, like a script that makes a call out. to to a fixed IP address with a remote shell, that CrowdStrike should be able to detect that. But that's a pretty simplistic example of what can go wrong. I think the other concern I have is, we're on the kind of like cloud, like we're still on the precipice of what's possible with these kinds of attacks. The adversaries are just kind of feeling their way through right now, trying to figure out like how can I leverage this technology to go off and you know perform attacks. And so I think we're in for a long slog that, again, I think is going to mirror some of what we've seen with the challenges in cloud.
Well, the one thing that occurs to me is something that we've talked about kind of off and on with the open source ecosystem in general is, do you know where your code's coming from that you're getting? And is it safe, right? Now, Hugging Face, to their credit, has some capabilities built in to try to detect malicious code from being shared out of their servers, and kudos to them, but they can't catch everything. So it's a tough one. And again, I don't know how many of the commercial code analysis tools are up to speed on this yet either. It's a whole brave new world, and there's a lot of room for bad actors to maneuver before our defenses catch up. So, it's not what most organizations want to hear, but I would say be very careful and don't just jump into whomever's got some interesting new version of code to play with. You don't know what you're downloading.
Yeah, but as we've talked about several times now, I think there is especially with AI right now, there is a desire to move fast, and I I don't see that changing anytime soon. And in fact, I see it kind of continuing to trend further in that direction. And so what I would say is, like, we've got to make sure that we're facilitating that rapid movement in a relatively safe way. So for example, you shouldn't be experimenting with, untrusted models on production systems, on production networks. Like, you should ideally be running these kinds of experiments in some sort of a controlled environment, so that if it goes horribly wrong, the damage is contained.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I know. Let's push it to production. What am I saying? Just push it to production. Who
We'll do it
cares?
live.
Who cares? What I've learned. Uh, Soon enough, it'll be AI making those calls anyway.
Hey,
So,
hey, look, those admins or devs are out there with a job. You don't have a job. So who got it right, mister?
you're. I can't argue with that. I just
The
can't argue
logic
with
is
that.
unimpeachable.
I can't argue. Anyway, the main point I wanted to make is, like, we're seeing, because of the rapid pace this is developing, we're starting to see attackers sit up and take notice. This particular event, I guess I'll call it, is an indication that it's possible, right? It's not impossible. There are opportunities to weaponize these models for attacks, and so um, we have we have to we have to exhibit some sort of care, because I do
Yeah,
feel like this is going to be the exposed to the internet control panels problem of, let's say, the 2030s.
fair enough. And it's good to see the bad actors innovating in the AI space, though. They got to keep it fresh too.
Good point. A very good point.